All right. Right now, I'm joined by an Amherstburg native, a former junior Chatham Maroon as well. He's a Princeton grad and former NHLer. He raised the cup with the LA Kings in 2012 and also spent time with the Hurricanes, Calgary Flames, and now VP of Hockey Development and Strategic Collaboration for the NHL. Kevin Westgarth, thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks, Drake. Good to be with you.
Absolutely, man. So where you're in Toronto now, or?
I'm in New York, actually.
New York. Holy shit.
Yeah.
Long way from the Berg, man.
Oh yeah, it's a little different. I have two boys that are, I suppose, growing up as New Yorkers and Brooklynites. So yeah, a little bit different than growing up in Amherstburg.
Yeah, that's cool. Obviously, I knew you've taken on this role after hockey. Working for the NHL could be placed really anywhere, but figure Toronto's the spot, and if not, I guess next big step is New York. I mean, right in New York.
Yeah, our office kind of. Yeah, so I live out in Brooklyn. The city, office in the city is Manhattan. We actually just moved, coming back from the pandemic to near. Actually, it's kind of nice. We're an avenue block over from Madison Square Garden, so if you got to go to a game, it makes that a little easier.
Yeah, exactly.
And then we got our offices in Toronto. A lot of hockey ops, and obviously the war room that everybody loves to talk about up there. And then another office, kind of historical office, deals with some registry and pension stuff in Montreal. So yeah, we're spotted throughout the big cities of North America.
That's cool. It's cool to hear. And again, just a guy from the Windsor area, long road, man. So I'm sure growing up was a lot of fun out there. You and your brother, both good hockey players. So what was life growing up like for you?
Again, it is very funny, as you're pointing out, like now that I live in New York, and it actually has come up more often just because, thinking of the differences that my boys are seeing than what I grew up with. It was great. We lived in a subdivision called Point West, and it had a golf course actually, which was pretty close and certainly fun for the summer to while away some hours out there. But yeah, it was nice. Lots of went to Saint Jean Baptiste, which I don't think is there anymore. I think combined with, or maybe it's still there. Forgive me for all my fellow alum, but then General Amherst High School, and some great experience there. Played a lot of hockey in Amherstburg, and yeah, like you said, ended up going to Chatham to kind of really start my high level hockey junior B. I think I was 17 at that point. So yeah, it was great place to grow up. Loved playing ball hockey in the streets. It was pretty wonderful county kid.
Yeah, it doesn't get old. Like, I kind of ask some people the same kind of questions, where are you from in Windsor, but it doesn't get old to hear everyone's kind of unique story. And of course, everyone has a different story, right? I'm sure I could have anticipated that answer, but we got to hear it right from the horse's mouth. Street hockey games. Did you play a lot of other sports growing up, or was it mostly hockey?
Oh, everything. Yeah. Mentioned getting the opportunity to golf, but yeah, we would play. Yeah, we played baseball, soccer, mixed in some tennis in there. I think in grade school I played basketball. Believe it or not, finesse part of it wasn't my game. It was more of a box out and rebound kind of guy. Yeah. Which I suppose was carried over to other sports.
Well, you're the flipping guy to tell me that this week, and so you and Eddie Mio are no basketball players.
Well, it works out, I guess, kind of comprehensively. My wife played basketball at Princeton. She's a far better athlete than I was, like 4-time All Ivy League champ. Like she was. I'm a little biased, but I dare say arguably the best women's basketball player at Princeton history.
That's cool, man. That's cool. Yeah, I know. Like, there's so much to talk about. I almost forget about that kind of stuff now, right? Like the connections that you have in your life. And speaking of which, I mean, being cool to play with your brother growing up and into Princeton as well. So I'm sure you remember those days with the Maroons pretty well. Again, having your older brother with you as well.
Yeah, it was, as you and I'm sure everybody in Windsor, Essex County knows, like it's kind of funny because he was 2 years older than me. So we never played. Once we got out of novice at the time, like we never played together. So I don't know how my parents freaking did it, getting us around even the county, much less, the rest of the the rest of the province and into Michigan and all that. But yeah, pretty awesome. I was able to join Brett. He had played a season for the Junior Maroons in Chatham under Dave Torrey, who was just one of the best. Ironically, now works for my old team, the LA Kings. I think he's still scouting away and doing great. I was able to join him there, and actually really kind of followed his or rode his coattails, I suppose. The assistant coach from Princeton had come to watch him when I was just starting, and I guess they liked what they saw and kind of asked me to apply pretty soon after my junior career had started. So it was quite a season for me, where I was playing hockey for General Amherst and Amherstburg. So to make the leap from basically small center travel hockey in high school to junior, and then to already have a college asking you to apply I still shake my head that happened. Fortunate timing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, like, leading up to those days in high school, you never thought, like, maybe I'll go to Princeton, maybe I'll go here, you know what I mean? So
no, it definitely was not a big part of my thought process. I think pretty much all I knew it from was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
Exactly, yeah.
I knew it was a good school.
Yeah, of course, an Ivy League school. I mean, and your brother had went there, like you mentioned. I was going to ask, of course, how do you end up in Princeton? Obviously, your brother's there, but was there other options, or once they had made that offer, it just only made sense to go with Brett, right?
Yeah, and taking a step back, like my parents were veterinarians, so I suppose obviously like education was very important in our household, and like I'm sure most people, it was kind of like you had to keep up your grades to play hockey, which thankfully was never a big problem. But when Princeton had come to see Brett, actually, ironically, they had come to see another kid named Brian Campbell, Soupy, obviously, and not that Brian Campbell.
Yeah.
Actually, I think he's working for the Red Wings these days.
Yeah.
Great player. I ironically didn't end up going to Princeton. He went to Union, but they saw my brother, and then basically the same thing happened the next year when they came and saw me. So there really wasn't much of a question. It was like, if I get into the school, I'm definitely doing this. It's like, the being able to mix hockey and academics was I couldn't have dreamed up a better situation. And wouldn't change it at this point either.
Yeah, I know. I mean, when you're a young kid, you just want to go to the NHL and you want to win the Stanley Cup. You did, but I mean, like, you're not thinking about that. You're not thinking like, I can go to a really good school and get a good education for after hockey. You're just like, nah, like, do they have a good hockey team? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, I mean, you have to have good grades to get into a school like that. I'm sure, I don't know if you've ever had this happen to you, but there's always that stigma about hockey players, and you're going to an Ivy League school. Have you ever had that, like, oh, you're supposed to be dumb kind of interaction, I suppose?
Yeah, and I don't run from it, to be honest. I always enjoyed, and I used to get, my buddies used to give me a bit of crap for kind of being I believe this is from what was that football movie with Johnny Moxon, James Vanderbeek, all that, where it's like, you're the damn dumbest smart kid I know.
Yeah.
So I used to have a little bit of that. So I at least kind of fit the mold that people expected. And in a weird way, I feel like, in years since, it's like, if people don't know I went to Princeton or whatever, it's like, oh, you're just a hockey player. And then be able to surprise people with stuff that they don't know is always kind of a fun experience. So
yeah, and it's cool for people watching the game to see like a different side of someone, right? Like, of course, everyone thinks the same about every hockey player, and then and then now for obviously to be doing your role and helping the game, it really is showing your worth, I guess.
Trying, man.
Yeah,
trying. That's all we can do, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to skip over any more Windsor Essex stuff. So before we continue on, we were talking before, just hearing some guys on the show and like telling stories and stuff. You played in Chatham, you played in Amherstburg. What can you kind of say about the hockey systems here? I mean, there's all over the place, right? But clearly a lot of great hockey players coming out of the area. What can you attest to all the coaches that you had and stuff, and still going these days?
Yeah. No, it was a fantastic place to grow up playing hockey. And actually, yeah, we were talking about how Andy Delmore was on a few weeks ago, and it was fun to listen to him. I was a little, a few years younger than him. So like Sun County AAA had come around by then for the county. And I played for that for a couple of years before getting cut and heading back to Amherstburg. But there was something beautiful about just playing and in your local center, and being at the league now, hearing people in big cities, be it Toronto or New York or Detroit for that matter. There is such a drive to be elite early. I think does a bit of a disservice to, the kids' development on and off the ice, and, to the game, being able to kind of give exposure and access to people who, aren't the kids of NHL players, or, might want to try it. So it's, I definitely don't want to have this golden era mentality that things were perfect back in the day and now they're all screwed up. It's always ever evolving and ever changing, but no, it was definitely a special place to play. And yeah, I had some great coaches. Actually, I mentioned Dave Torrey, had him for a year in Chatham. He was awesome. I would say still probably my top 2 or 3 all-time like bench coaches. His ability to like match lines was and kind of set up a game that way was incredible.
Yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Just it starts in your small town, and it's still as relevant, as the years go on, and throughout the whole area. There's just so much pristine when it comes to hockey. So love to talk about it. That's why I'm still doing this after all these years.
No, props to you. It's great. And I always kind of laugh that I don't know if I had much option becoming an enforcer, looking at the roster of most of the guys that came from our area, even kind of contemporaries like Steve Ott. Well, maybe not quite an enforcer. He certainly liked the physical side.
Yeah.
Obviously it goes on and on from Darren McCarty down through or over through Proby and Jim Cummins is nearby. Ty Domi. It's a pretty good list.
Yeah,
I would put up the Windsor Essex County team at least in a physical match against most other areas.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean that's definitely a topic that's been talked about before on the show as well. I mean, I think you kind of were one of those Windsor guys that they were probably like, sure as shit, this guy's from Windsor.
And I better not forget about Bundy, Warren Reichel. What a beauty.
Oh yeah, that's the list just goes on and on. Not only of talented players, but of tough players that have come from the area.
For sure.
Yeah, man. And I'm sure you and Brett were a tough pair to be matched together at some points, and from playing with each other in junior to college, both in the AHL, now playing against each other, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, no, we certainly were like most brothers growing up, and 2 active boys. And as I mentioned, I'm going through it now. My brother and I were 2 years to the day apart. My boys are like 19 and a half months apart. So this has been an interesting evolution to see how many headaches must have been giving my parents over all these years. But I think it paid dividends for on the ice, I suppose. We certainly were used to the rough stuff. And playing with him at Princeton was super special. We actually ended up graduating the same year.
Yeah.
And probably took it for granted that it was happening back then, but years since, it's pretty crazy to tell people. It's like, yeah, no, we actually played together for 3 years and actually graduated together from a school 1,000 miles away, and pretty special. And then ended up playing each other a bunch in the AHL, and he had quite a little career that I think he enjoyed for a little while, and then he went on to use his brain for bigger, better things. So
is he in consulting now, or?
Yeah, he's kind of bounced through different consulting roles over years. So again, I love chatting with him. He's pretty helpful for just thought process and thinking things through for me, and always telling me things that I basically don't understand about his fintech consulting startup company that he's working for. So it's a lot of fun though, having different stories.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, good dynamic to bounce stuff off each other, I'm sure. I mean, obviously both being in the game as well. It's not like he's no stranger to the stuff
Yeah.
that you're
Well,
dealing with, right?
that was some of the best. Was we were very adamantly told by my mom that we weren't allowed to fight each other. So I think there is a picture that we got a hold of where we ran into each other in the corner, and it's basically a huge yard sale because kind of neither one of us got the better of it, and he's like Garfielded up against the glass, and I'm like, going head over heels in the corner. So we didn't fight each other, but we didn't hesitate to try to throw a hit anyway.
Mom would still consider that a fight.
Yeah, probably.
But it's special, man, to to do those things, even just growing up with your brothers and to have it go that far into your career is rare. So it's really
absolutely.
cool. I mean, you guys both graduating at around the same year. You said about 2007. What did you graduate from at Princeton?
So at school, I majored in psychology and kind of did the pre-med requirements. Yeah, and mentioned my parents are veterinarians. Always loved kind of medicine, and quite a place to be for having that interest. Given that we would after school basically walk to their clinic and could watch surgeries sometimes. could like lend a hand cleaning the dog and cat cages and anything between there as well. So yeah, that certainly, and then playing hockey, I broke my arm when I was 17, actually my second year in Chatham. So I was 18. And just to think about, I ended up getting plates put in, so I had to have it truly fixed. And just to think that, this doctor basically saved my hockey career, and to imagine that impact to know that impact that surgeon had on me, and to think, basically in a different world, maybe I would have become an orthopedic surgeon or something like that if I could get through all the schoolwork. But still loved all my docs that I had over those years, and got to enjoy sometimes watching the surgery on myself when I was going through those at the pro level too.
Yeah. So I'm sure you had a few visits, so came in handy for sure. But we were talking about you and your brother, and kind of being parallel with each other. And one thing else I just realized, if I'm not mistaken, both undrafted, both graduate from college, both signed pro the same year. So you end up with the infamous Monarchs, the Manchester Monarchs. So how did it kind of go down for you signing your first pro contract?
Well, it's once again wild to look back at that, because my brother and I were both seniors. We had gotten kind of in touch with an advisor who was kind of helping us just through the process. He'd gotten us to a couple rookie camp type things in previous summer. So there was like a bit of, I don't know, quite call it buzz. It wasn't, Adam Fox, but it was, people at least knew our names. And but we were playing Dartmouth in the second round of the playoffs, which is pretty great since Princeton. We didn't have quite the most successful 4 years of college, but we did win more games every year I was there. So won a playoff round, ended up losing to Dartmouth, and pretty devastating to know that you lived and died and ate and messed around with all these guys for 4 years, and to know that it was over was pretty sad. So to go from one of the lowest moments to talking to the advisor, who was like, all right, LA wants to sign you to this and this that we talked about, like you're gonna max out the signing bonus and keep the minimum, or sign at the minimum. It was just like, whoa, what? And so kind of one of the lowest moments to one of the highest moments. That's like, holy crap, you're signing a two-way NHL contract today. And it was pretty special to obviously both share that with my brother. My brother went to play in Syracuse in the AHL, and I went to Manchester. And then a few of our other teammates also went on to play, which was, it was just amazing to share it with those guys who we had been just living every minute with for the previous 4 years.
Yeah. Again, just like everything else, just like junior, high school, college hockey, it's they always say the best 4 years of your life or whatever, and you think like, whatever. But once it's all said and done, you're like, damn, they were right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well,
I always try to think that the best 4 years will be the next 4 years, but
yeah.
or else we're doing it wrong, I suppose. But yeah, there's a special place in there for those university years.
Yeah, just if you can have so many memories from basically short couple of years when you're young like that, it obviously stands out, right? So it's what it is, I suppose. But
and as we get older, our perspective on responsibilities and priorities change a little bit. So it's very funny to think of how different our things we needed to do, and perhaps how we don't look at them as quite as important anymore. But it was a big deal back then.
Yeah, for sure, man. Time's definitely changing, but you're still involved in it, and then of course, like, this was just the beginning of kind of your hockey career, I guess, for some people that know of you from the NHL, of course. So spent a couple years in the minor system before getting called up, and proving your worth to eventually make that LA team. So I'm sure you remember your first call up, first game, how to kind of go down for you, and what do you remember?
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I got called up and joined the team, I believe in LA. Paradoxically, playing the Red Wings. So also meant I didn't play that game.
Well, back then, yeah.
Yeah, my skill set wasn't quite required, but they wanted me around. So then the next game, we went to Dallas. I found out, like, my family, a bunch of people were watching. I got to take warm-ups and then didn't play the game. So then our next game was in Minnesota. And at the time, Derek Bogard was there. So certainly fired myself up and found out that I was playing that night, and was, not, let's say not worried, but obviously aware that Boogie was quite the scrapper. And wondered if we were going to go. We didn't end up going, but learned a good lesson, because at one point, right as Evenons, who was kind of the other enforcer on the Kings, we got up early, which was obviously great from a team standpoint, not great for me wanting to show that I could scrap.
Yeah.
I kind of turned to him like, what do you think? Like, we're up, but I don't want to lose momentum. Like, should I fight? And he's like, no, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Then the next thing I know, I turn around, he's on the ice fighting Boogie. I was like, oh yeah, it's a good lesson. Like, we are on a team, but we also don't want to lose our jobs. So fair enough, buddy.
Yeah.
But he was a good dude too. So it was great. But yeah, also remember that was the day that Barack Obama got inaugurated.
Yeah.
January 20th. When was that? Geez,
2010?
2009.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, two big things happened that day. One of them probably bigger for the world.
Yeah, I mean,
for me,
the newspaper is Obama here, and Westgarth is here. Wait, but hey, man, that's cool. It's cool because that's a crazy time in just the world and in hockey and sports. That around 2010, just when social media was starting to come in, so there's still a lot of mystery around those times, and especially that LA team. Man, what a franchise to be part of that beginning. I mean, I don't imagine you were ever a Kings fan growing up. Were you a Wings fan? And is that why maybe that first game would have been a little sentimental? Or
the Wings were always, those were the games I got to go to.
Yeah.
Once again, I'm sure like most of the listeners, for the NHL, that was my going to the Joe.
Yeah, of course.
Back then was my foot in the door with the NHL, and so it was special. Though basically my parents were Wings fans. My brother became a Leafs fan, which I can see you might be based on that flag behind you.
I know.
So couldn't be any of those things. Obviously, I ended up becoming a Bruins fan because I loved Cam Neely and wanted to play like him.
It's interesting being in Windsor and people's home or favorite teams. If it's not Toronto or Detroit, it's I just like the team because of a guy or because of whatever, right? But then those are the people that get razzed. Like, why do you like Boston?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was it. And I suppose it's kind of kept going that way. I suppose I'm supposed to be impartial, or I am impartial at the league. But kind of root for and against players.
Yeah,
Mostly for, but there's a handful against. So
yeah.
And I won't comment on exactly who.
Well, there's still guys that I'm sure you played against that are in the league, right?
You're spot on, and some of them become elite superstars, which I cannot wrap my mind around.
Unbelievable! What could
Playing
happen?
for my favorite team, but he's grown on me a little bit.
Yeah,
that's the little fellow there.
I think everyone could figure that out pretty easily. But again, man, like 2010 or 11, 12. Obviously that year, huge year, first NHL goal that year as well. Do you remember your first goal?
Yeah, that was it was pretty awesome. Actually back in Dallas thinking about it. I think we were in Dallas, and just grinding away on the fourth line. Colin Fraser kind of deflected a pass away that came right to me, snapped it in, mostly top corner. Against I was playing with Ethan Moreau and Colin Fraser. Yeah, and it was a long time coming for one thing, and it was also fun. I knew a couple of the guys on the Stars, actually, Steve Ott and a handful of other guys, and it was both very nice, but also a little bit like I was a mascot, because a couple of them came over and gave me a tap on the butt and hey, nice goal, Westy. And the refs were cheering for me. It was attaboy, Westy. So I was like, thanks guys. But also I need to score some more. So it's not such a big deal.
I feel you. I've been there. But man, that's a crazy year. So, your first goal, you're kind of, in and out of the lineup years before that. So now you've finally secured your spot, but unfortunately that you hurt your hand that year and you're out for a bit. Obviously that's the year the Kings win their first Stanley Cup, and you're still there to raise the cup with them and name engraved and all that. Did they just feel like you were such a big part of the team, they wanted you? What's the story there? Normally it's you got to play so many games and blah blah blah, right?
Yeah, I truly appreciate Dean Lombardi and Ron Hextall, who's obviously moved. It's all somewhat changed. Even Daryl Sutter, who I didn't even get to play a whole lot for. They were just they all did really appreciate, and part of our messaging and part of what probably made us that kind of team was obviously how important everybody was, is they're part of the role. And obviously having been around for, in the organization for 4 or 5 years at that point, up and down the minors, but had kind of gotten to be a part of this rebuild. And our team was just big and strong, and they could kind of do it by committee. So my role was a little bit I guess marginalized, and we just had big, strong, good hockey players, which was awesome to see. But obviously go through the minors with some of those guys, including Jonathan Quick and Alec Martinez and Trevor Lewis, and
there's so many guys you can name. Yeah, it was living and dying in Manchester for a few years with those guys. It was pretty ridiculous to hold the cup. It was a surreal moment then and a surreal moment now. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just can't trust everything you read online, right? So there has to be a little bit of a story here. If there's something I missed back in 2010, you can't really look it up anymore, So I figured it is a cool story, man. To technically they could have just left you sitting there, but the boys wanted you to be part of this celebration.
Yeah, no, I appreciated that, front office. And it really was just a pretty special group of people. And yeah, pretty nice to be, connected for life with all the players and the staff. It is amazing. Actually, probably one of my favorite moments. It was a few days after, and I'm pretty sure half the guys probably hadn't gone to bed. We had a couple of things. I think we went to a Dodgers game and threw out a first pitch, and finally it was kind of calming down, and so everybody was gassed and ready to go to bed. And all right, what do we want to do with the cup? The Hall of Fame guys, the cup keepers, there's like, where are we going? Like nobody, everybody was like, I need to go to bed. There was like a handful of us like, you can bring it back to my place. So we brought it back to like my house, and I was, not far from our practice facility, like had a nice little roof deck. And I remember we ordered Domino's and ended up sitting up on the roof. I remember sitting with Jonathan Quick, a couple of years before we were being idiots in Manchester, and now we're idiots sitting in, outside of Los Angeles on a roof deck with the Stanley Cup and pizza next to us. It was like, how did this happen? And Quickie was a pretty big reason for that. And he was just a warrior, battled through real bad back throughout the entire playoffs, and just a pretty special goalie. So it was one of those kind of, put a exclamation point on that moment.
Oh yeah.
Pretty special.
Yeah. I mean, like obviously doing this show, I'm always talking like from the beginning to the end kind of thing, but even just from a couple of years prior, going from the minors with all that same team and to the Stanley Cup. I mean, unbelievable. And when you're sitting there on your patio eating pizza, did you tell them too bad you couldn't get some Windsor pizza instead of Domino's?
I think the Domino's is Detroit based at least, so it didn't feel too far afield. But I missed the shredded pep and the sauce, but that's all right.
Yeah, we always bring that up, man.
We made it work.
Yeah. But from there, obviously the Kings go on and they continue this dynasty for a few more years. You go on to Carolina first and Calgary. Got to play some hockey in pro hockey, NHL hockey in Canada. Had to have been, pretty cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, when you really do kind of build out the checklist of things that you could accomplish, obviously with the big checkbox being make it to the NHL, and then winning a Stanley Cup, I obviously would have been fine with that, but it was definitely a nice cherry on top to get back like to Canada to play in a Canadian market. And like I really did appreciate the fans there. Like it was somewhat of a rough time. They were again entering their rebuilding years. Had amazing. It's amazing to see, and I think Jordan Stahl might be the only guy left that I played with in Carolina. And I couldn't be happier for how they're doing. And again, the people, still a lot of the same people, or at least a number of the same people in the front office and around the rink. So thrilled that they're, having some success now, especially, Rod the Bod.
Yeah.
Brenda Moore is doing an amazing job, but to do it in Calgary, was awesome. And like, we weren't doing great, but like they loved it. Like they loved, the kind of personality the team had. They had a bunch of,
I'm sure
not quite all nobodies, but they appreciated the hard work and the grit that we were trying to bring to the ice. And, it's nice to see them having success with my old LA Kings coach and Sutsy bringing the heat and getting them going this year. So, it was a pretty special place to play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know it's not where you wrapped it up, but to towards the end of your NHL career to be playing in Canada, again, maybe a little like feather in the cap kind of thing before you start to hand it off. And not to skip over Carolina either. I mean, you mentioned that's a team that for some reason I can't hate them. They're just a strong like now, but even going back then, Jordan Stahl has been around from the Stanley Cup team and stuff too, right? So, long history there, I'm sure, coming from the Kings, giving your role there, a little bit of bouncing back and forth from that team, I'm sure, given your talent and learning as well, right?
Yeah, it was, it worked out as a great move on a number of fronts. It was, I got the opportunity to play a little more at times. Again, the Kings had almost grown beyond my ability to kind of have my job be important to some degree. Again, like you said, they continued to be successful, and geez, we're still seeing some of those guys between Kopitar, Brown, and Doughty. Quickie still ticking around, but I think back to that locker room, like with Matt Green and Rob Scuderi and Willie Mitchell and Jared Stoll, like it's just a bunch of guys that I would accept as a leader for any other team in the league. So it was pretty awesome. Wow, Mike Richard, Jeff Carter.
I know that.
I can keep going, I'm sure.
Yeah, because I was gonna say it earlier. I used to play with the Kings on NHL 10 or whatever, and then like we would have the AHL team too, so I would play with the Monarchs once the playoffs were done, so like I knew like every guy. That's how I know like the depth of hockey is from video games. But
I mean, it's a good way to learn. I think I was too old enough, definitely had my EA NHL 94, the classic, but yeah, collecting trading cards I think is how I got to know the league. Like, it is amazing. I can't mention how
it's coming back too now, all the cards.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
I don't know if kids can afford them the same way that we used to.
No, that's why I just get the Tim Hortons ones because they're $1, and even then I'm like, I don't know who this kid is. Like, I should know every guy. I'm like, who the hell is this from Minnesota? Yeah. But speaking of kind of speaking of weird markets for hockey, you go overseas to wrap it up in Belfast. Definitely a team I've heard of before over there in the British League. So what was that like for you?
It was awesome experience living in Belfast for a year, and it as a city it was, and just experiencing the culture, and for what it's worth, my grandma was Irish, and I was able to get my Irish passport, so like there was something special about that. My family took a trip when we were getting older, kind of at the end of high school. I think we went over there and toured around Ireland. Obviously, we're playing in Northern Ireland versus down south, but sticky subject. So it was fun to play in Ireland, Northern Ireland, in the UK league. It was fun to kind of go over there and have a little swan song and experience something a little different with Megan, my wife. She was over there with me, so it was really just a nice way to put a bit of a period on the end of that hockey time in my life. Really, really fun experience.
Yeah, man, and just be able to travel the world through the game of hockey is something, again, I always talk about with people. It's cool to take advantage of it, and see the world and stuff like that. So it's really
no
cool,
question. And I went kind of the low impact route where they did speak English there, so didn't quite have the experiences of some of the guys who went over to the KHL or Swiss league or German league. It was a little softer entry. And I did discover probably one of my favorite accents in the Belfast or Northern Irish accent. Do yourself a favor. Liam Neeson is Northern Irish, so it's a good one.
There, more content for the podcast, I guess.
That's right. Add some footnotes to some Liam Neeson quotes or something.
That's cool. Well, again, man, you decided to wrap it up there. Again, a good way to kind of end it off. And obviously now the VP of hockey development wasn't your first role at the league, I don't think either, but kind of how did you get into it? Did you step in right away, apply for a job? Did they call you? How did it go down for you?
So I had, as a player, I was like pretty involved with the Players Association, usually the rep on the team that was on. And when collective bargaining came up, after we had won the cup in 2012, there was the work stoppage, and we had bargaining, and I just wanted to be involved. I certainly thought that I could lend a hand and hopefully selfishly learn about the true business of the sport. And as a pretty good bonus, like you're meeting the leadership for the Players Association, the leadership from the NHL owners. So all in all, it was like, this can't be a bad thing. And battled through that. That was quite an experience where I'm sure if anybody who paid attention was probably close to as frustrated as everybody involved, in the boardroom. It would get frustrating where, it felt like you made some progress over a couple of days, and then all of a sudden it was like, no, and then not talk for 2 more weeks. And it's like, God. So it was, and again, learning tons and tons about the business itself, and got to be, as I said, got to know, the commissioner, got to know Gary a little bit, and got to know Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly pretty well. So as stayed in touch with the PA, stayed in touch with the NHL, and kind of was looking through my options, and kind of began that discussion as the writing was on the wall. My hockey career was coming to an end as I was over in Belfast, and I was still a trustee on the pension, which was my kind of focus on during the collective bargaining, and was able to be in New York and meet with Bill and Gary a couple of times. And finally they flipped the switch and said, all right, come on board and figure it out. And had outlined a few things I thought I was good at and hope to help add some value to. And thankfully, I think I'm at least adding some value still to this day. So yeah, it was a bit of a winding path getting into where I'm at now, but amazing to kind of get involved. And, again, there's the cliche of giving back to the game, and I definitely hope to continue to make it better than I found it.
Absolutely, man. I mean, that's a cool story. It all kind of fell into place, and everything from your, road to that moment really paid off. Obviously being involved in the game, going to school, as we mentioned, I'm sure it was beneficial in some way. So it all has worked out for you. Now, making yourself a great living through the league, not only just through the game, but in the league itself. And probably very busy behind the scenes, but do you ever get to come home once in a while and visit at least the Berg? Or
yeah, the last couple of years accepted for perhaps obvious reasons. I'm not sure how timeless you want to make these podcasts, but
yeah. Well,
you're listening to this in the future. There's a pandemic right now. Well, obviously wasn't able to get home last couple of summers, but every other year, and hopefully this year coming up, we'll be able to get back to Amherstburg for a week or so. And, thankfully my parents still live in the same neighborhood we grew up in, which is incredible and nice to be able to go back there, see buddies. And, although I feel like half of them, classically emigrated up to Toronto, but they'll be back. Exactly. And usually get to see some of them and other buddies that are in the area. So
yeah, again, I thought you were working in Toronto, so I figured it'd be a little bit easier, but now, big city. So obviously it's not as easy to be coming down, but man, this has been a great talk. Thank you so much for taking the time to kind of tell your story, talk about Windsor hockey with me, and the business side of the NHL too. Obviously, something I'm always interested in. So it's cool to have a guy from Windsor on that board, man.
Well, we appreciate it here, and I guess I appreciate it. And yeah, it was awesome. I appreciate you reaching out. And yeah, this has been fantastic. Fun to relive. And some of these days, I definitely imagine myself back in Amherstburg when the big city gets to be a little too busy. But it's maybe one day, we'll see.